You know, if you've been around at all, I love history. And the greatest 20th century American historian of the Catholic Church was Monsignor John Tracy Ellis. Not that church historians get famous, but if there was a famous historian in the 20th century, that would be him. And Ellis's masterpiece was his 2-volume biography of Cardinal James Gibbons, who was the Archbishop of Baltimore and also the leader of the Catholic Church in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And Ellis tells the story of one prominent Catholic layman in Baltimore he interviewed for Gibbons' biography. So this man remembered how, as a little boy, his parents would take him for a walk every Sunday following dinner. It was always the same route they would walk. And it was every single Sunday they would pass by a small, distinguished-looking man, all dressed in black, going in the opposite direction. Invariably, the man would tip his hat to them, smile, and say, "Good afternoon." The little boy wanted to stop and speak with him. He seemed very kind and courteous, but his parents never returned the greetings and sort of turned away from the man and hurried the boy along. And they would eventually explain that the man was a Catholic priest and they did not associate with those people. But so engaging was the smile of this priest, and so warm the greetings Sunday after Sunday, even when they ignored him, that the man told Ellis he became curious about the Catholic Church through that. And at the age of 22, to the horror of his parents, he decided to become Catholic. So you can imagine the man's shock when, at the cathedral for receiving confirmation, he saw processing up the aisle the same small man who had greeted him so many years before on Sunday walks on the streets of Baltimore. It was Cardinal Gibbons. So in our first reading today, we heard Abraham negotiating for the lives of the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. He talks God down to sparing the cities if there's only 10 innocent people can be found there. And from this passage in Genesis, there's a Jewish legend that at any one time there must be at least 10 righteous people on earth, or God will deliver our just punishment and end the world. So since we don't know who the 10 are, or if there's 10, or if there's only 9, I need to be one of them. It might be up to me to save the world by living a righteous life. So anyway, the legend's lesson is simply, even a small number of holy people is a huge treasure. It's not a numbers game. It's not a proportion game. What's the use? What good does it do? I mean, those are our thoughts, sometimes our words, but those are the way we can think. As we try to live out the gospel fully, we're trying to do our best living the gospel. We say, what does it make any difference at all? I think here, our efforts seem to be small compared to the tide of people living in the opposite direction without any real thought or love for the kingdom. So do our small efforts make any difference? So we may be tempted to discouragement in these days by seeming ineffectiveness of our lives of faith. I think, again, trying to work against the tide, I think of parents who, they're trying to limit the impact of online culture, smartphone screens in their children's lives by setting limits there and restrictions on those kind of electronics. But what's the use, we could say, that we do in the face of our other contemporaries, what they're doing, what society's doing? What difference does it make? How can we go against that? Well, I was thinking, young person trying to live a modest, chaste life, what weight does his or her example and resolution have against the countervailing storm, really? The devil in the world just kind of whisper, or sometimes just shout that, why bother? Why be lonely? You're weird, look around, this is the way it is, get on board. So again, what difference does this life of mine make? How can I live against the multitude? Or I think of spouses, parents, grandparents who are praying year after year for loved ones who have left the faith or don't know the faith, and seemingly nothing happens. What's the use of this prayer of mine? I simply say, remember Jesus' lessons in the gospel. Keep knocking. Remember keep knocking? And remember Abraham in the first reading. So God's ready to forgive the sins, the horrible sins of thousands of sinners for the sake of just 10, that's just a teeny number of righteous, through the intercession of just one man. So again, Scripture, not just the legend, but the Scripture, in the struggle for the kingdom, the weight of saints and sinners is not the same. The love of one disciple can outweigh a multitude. I was thinking in the late 1800s, there was a great deal of anti-Catholic prejudice in America. It would have been very easy for James Gibbons to grow cold towards those who ignored him as that boy's parents did. Or at least it would have been understandable if he simply gave up the small gestures of charity in the face of repeated snubs. But he knew a kindness is a kindness, no matter how it's immediately received. So in God's eyes and plan, it has a value all its own, out of proportion to the world's calculations. So Gibbon's small act of kindness, that repeated Sunday after Sunday, small little gesture of charity, had an impact he never would know about at the time. It was only years later, and this was a grace even that God let him understand this, the reconnection. It was only later that God blessed him by showing how Jesus had gained one more soul from his actions, and also how he had gained and was preparing for an eventual friend and co-worker in the kingdom in Baltimore. Again, it became a very prominent member of the community, and Gibbons said there's a connection here. God was at work. So that same thing is true in our own small lives. If we're faithful, we don't give up, but keep praying with our hearts and lives, knocking on the door. Someday we will be shown, if not in this life, in the next, the amazing power of our small sacrifices and our lives, and we've been given a chance to uphold and grow the kingdom out of all proportion to our own merits, worth, and number. If we will only remain united to Jesus and faithful in his desires in the time and place he has put us.